Welcome to Meet the Author Live from book publisher New Degree Press, or NDP. I'm your host, John Saunders. NDP is part of Manuscripts Inc. This enterprise has published authors from 6 continents, over 1,500 authors from 6 continents, and is now ranked 293rd on the Inc. 5000 list. This is the fastest growing privately held companies in America. If you think you have a book in you or want to start or accelerate your movement in the next 12 to 15 months, visit manuscripts.com. The next cohort starts this winter. This is a comprehensive coaching program that will take you from idea to published book. Not just published, but published like a second-time author, which includes audience activation and creation. Meet the Author Live, today's show, is an opportunity to learn everything valuable there is to know about an author. Plus, we can answer your questions in the chat. So if you would, please drop where you're calling us from, where you're calling in from in the chat, and certainly ask questions as we go, because we can answer those throughout the program. On this episode, we'll meet Jim Young, and we'll chat about his newly released book, Expansive Intimacy, How Tough Guys Defeat Burnout, and talk about his journey from the depths of burnout to thriving in business, parenting, socially, romantic relationships, and even as a professional comedian. Jim is an executive coach, facilitator, author, and speaker who leverages the experiences from the corporate C-suite to cure burnout for leaders and organizations. His book helps men create a roadmap that leads them through a common modern malaise and into a new expansive form of success that spans all aspects of their lives. Jim, congratulations on the new book. Great to see you. Thanks for being on the show today.
Thanks, John. Great to see you again. And that sure sounded like a lot. Wow, that's pretty cool.
You've been busy, my friend. You've been busy.
Indeed.
So how does it feel to have a book out there after all this work? You've been a coach now for 4 or 5 years, and now you've added author to your title. How's it feel to have a book out there?
It's a little bit unbelievable. Like I thought I'd write a book someday. I had thought about it for a bunch of years, and then it just kind of all of a sudden happened. I did Book Creators, signed up for it. I think my first session, like the group sessions that Eric Custer leads, was in like late September of last year. So it was less than a year between starting to write the book and actually having copies in my hand, which was amazing.
It's hard to believe you can get it done that fast. And a year might seem like a long time, but when I was writing my book and promoting it, mine came out at the end of 2020. I had so many people reach out to me and say, John, I've been writing a book for 5 years. I'm on chapter 3. How did you get this done?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And lo and behold, right, the structure of the guidance is a big help for me.
Yeah. I guess I was ready. Like it spilled out of me, but I also had guidance. I had deadlines. I work well on deadlines. I had resources. I learned some of the tricks of the trade, and I was really excited to have it out.
What was, as a entrepreneur, busy guy doing all this coaching and facilitating, like what was the author journey like for you? How did you kind of fit it into your life?
That's a great question. I don't know. How did I do that? As my own boss, as a solo entrepreneur, I do get to create my schedule. And I knew like taking the project on was going to mean I had to add something to my plate. I didn't just have, endless free time. So I would find times I'd get up early in the morning sometimes to write, which is not a thing for me usually. I did a lot of work on weekends, weekends that I wasn't with my kids. I would, sit with my partner and we'd write. She was writing a book at the same time, so that was super helpful. And just, really finding time in my day where, especially when inspiration struck, I'm more of an episodic writer. When I catch that wind, I let the sail out and I can crank through 3,000 words in, an hour and a half. So a lot of it came in bursts.
Wow. Right. Episodic, deadline, consistent writing. There's all sorts of ways to do it. And what's fun about this journey is, one, you're taught what those things are and that they exist, and that it's okay to find one that works for you and run with that. I love the sailing analogy there.
Yeah.
Jim, you've been a guy who's been very reflective and introspective, and I've gotten to know you over the last year, and it's been so fun to have a little tiny front row seat to your journey here, maybe third row. A lot of people tell me that they learn about themselves throughout the journey of writing, and you've done so much work around this yourself. But how did the book take it to a different level for you of this self-discovery?
And there's a lot of different ways I could answer that. I think the biggest one was a topic that came up that I just didn't plan to write about. And that as I cracked it open, I was like, oh, okay, here we go. And it was shame. And really diving in. And I've done a lot of reading about shame through Brene Brown's work over the years. Big fan of hers. She's a big influence. And obviously done some of that work myself in therapy settings and other places. But to then sit down and confront it as like I'm writing about it, I'm telling stories about it, I'm asking other guys to share their stories about shame, and I'm doing research. It just took it to another level where I had to not only focus my energy on trying to put something out there that I think touches on a really sensitive topic and do it in a way that's relatable, but at the same time, I'm processing my own shame. I'm, getting another turn around that merry-go-round.
I mean, holy cow, what an experience. And I love that, as so many authors find, you come into this journey thinking this is the book I'm going to write. But as you grow through the process, you do the research, you learn, and you meet new people, you actually expand your thinking about it. And it certainly sounds like you had a lot of that with this concept of shame, which is right something that's still, Brene Brown is, I'll say, made it more accessible, but probably a long way to go for people to talk about that yet. But that's
Yeah.
awesome. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
Speaking of writing a book, would you write another one, Jim, now that you've got this one out there?
I think I will. I'm going to give it a little time. I want to do what I can to get this book out there. I've had somebody ask me, a couple people ask me, what's this book going to do for you? Like, how much are you going to make on royalties? How many books are you going to sell? And I'm like, not that much. I mean, if a book does really well, I'll sell a couple thousand copies in the first year. And at the royalty rates and after taxes, like it's, several $1,000s, maybe. Certainly not life-changing for me. It's about how many other lives can I change? And I've started to get messages trickling in from guys who've read the book where like the reward has already arrived. I get these messages from guys that talk about connections they've started to make with old friends, or how it's helping them navigate their work or their relationship. That's where it's at for me, is like, how can I get this book out to enough people to change their lives, not to change mine?
That is incredible. And I mean, I love this mission you've always had for helping others. And this book is now letting you do that at another level, maybe, dare I say, even at scale. So that is so, so
Hope
cool.
so. Yeah.
Right? Love that. So you've got this lovely fuchsia shirt on. Is that fuchsia, Jim? What is going on with the shirt there today?
I guess that could be fuchsia. This is my favorite shirt. It was actually in my promo video when I did the pre-sale campaign. So anybody who watched that maybe recognizes it. If I step back, you can see it's Dave Grohl from the Foo Fighters. And if anybody who's read my book already, you'll know I'm a huge Foo Fighters fan. So I make a bunch of music references in the book, including a ton of Foo Fighters songs. I was just actually listening to some. I kind of use music to help me get into a mood for things like this. And one of the songs I put on was one called Shame, Shame. And he just, like, I love that he's willing to go to these topics. Actually, I'm not going to strip on LinkedIn, I promise. But this is from another song.
Thank you for that.
It's real. The pain you feel is a lyric from a song called Best of You. And I think I tap into what he talks about, what he sings about, especially because he's not afraid to go to these really sensitive places. Like, men have shame. There's pain that we have, and it's real. And another maybe water analogy from my other sailing analogies, like, I like to think that there's this ocean of tears sitting out there that's uncried by men. And that's what's sitting like there causing all this tension, is like all the stuff we've stuffed down over the years, and it's coming out in so many messed up ways. So this shirt reminds me to tap into that.
Wow. I mean, ocean of tears. And here you are seeking them out and trying to help people get through that. I mean, what an incredible mission you're on. You talk a little bit more about the book before we dive into my favorite questions, which is really getting to know you as a human. Obviously, intimacy is a big part of this. And I think many times people might think about specific things when they hear the word intimacy. And one of the things you talk about in the book is defining intimacy, and we talk about this a lot more in the full episode of the podcast, which Jim was on a few weeks ago. His episode came out last week on the creator community on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, wherever you consume podcasts. But could you talk a little bit about what you mean when you get into defining intimacy, and how is it different than what we might think?
I discovered this for myself within the last few years, and it was in part because I was trying to figure out how I left burnout behind. I'd been in burnout for several years, and then I was not. And it wasn't this like quick transition. It was this murky phase. And I realized in sitting with it for a bit that it was intimate connections that I'd been creating. And I was single as that was happening, right? So I didn't have a romantic partner. I wasn't in that kind of relationship that we typically think of as an intimate relationship. And that's where I was healing. That's where I was getting back to my full self instead of wearing the mask that we might wear. And so I realized that intimacy has this expansive range. It's in the ways that we are with friends, with colleagues, with family members, and relationship romantic partners. And it's across all these other vectors too. There's sexual intimacy like we'd have with a romantic partner, but then we've also got physical intimacy, which we can have with all sorts of people. There's emotional intimacy, experiential, spiritual, is all these different ways, all these different types of people. And it gives us endless opportunities to experience life like full on, no pretenses.
I really appreciate you broadening out this concept of intimacy and how important it is, and how powerful it can be in helping us live better and healthier lives and having deeper relationships. And I so appreciate the depth you go into this in our full interview on the creator community. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
And so Jim's book, Expansive Intimacy, is available today wherever you buy books online. And if you want to learn more about Jim's story, you can visit thecenteredcoach.com or find him on LinkedIn at The Centered Coach. And learn more about his work there and some of the great things he's been doing. So we learned about the shirt. We've learned a little bit about the book. What are some of your big goals for 2022, the balance of 2022 and beyond, now that you're a published author?
Yeah, I mean, as I said before, getting the book out to as many people as possible so that they can be using it to create these kinds of lives where, that burnout goes away. They get to really enjoy all aspects of their life. I'm doing a lot of other work around burnout. So I'm coaching people individually. I continue to do that and working on organizational burnout. That's one of the passions that I have, is getting into organizations where I can help make a much bigger impact, right? I actually just started working with a company that's a very male-dominated industry, about 75 employees, and coming into burnout-proof their organization. So helping them see, where does it live, what's going on there, and what can we do to reverse that? So those things, and then anything else that helps me get more people aware and open to talking about this. So getting out and doing talks for larger groups is another way I'm pursuing.
That is awesome. And burnout proofing an organization, no easy task, but if there's anyone that can do it, it is yours. It's you. And we talked in your intro a little bit about doing some comedy and improv work that you've done. And you did some work recently with a rather large corporation around burnout that you were able to incorporate some of this improv work. Is it right? Do I have the story right?
Yeah, well, they didn't bring me in specifically for burnout, but I like to think that they did. So what I got brought in for was emotional intelligence development. And to me, there's two ways we can look at burnout. We can either do recovery work or we can do prevention work. And prevention's tough, but if we develop emotional intelligence, we can prevent the conditions that build up into burnout. And I deliver that kind of emotional intelligence training through something called applied improv. We use improv skills and techniques in helping people learn new skills.
How fascinating. I mean, what was even your inspiration? You did that through Second City, is that right?
I started learning improv through Happier Valley Comedy here in my backyard in Hadley, Massachusetts. And I've done training in Chicago at the Annoyance Theater with a guy named Mick Napier, who's a kind of a legend in the field, and a bunch of other people. And I've learned applied improv as this other branch. So I perform on stage once a month, and that's super fun. But bringing it into settings where people don't expect, like improv is going to be a tool that's going to help them. And it really is. It activates things that a regular training doesn't do.
Thank you for the correction there on what program you went through. I mean,
Yeah.
what was your inspiration to even get into improv in the first place? That's interesting to me for a guy that had this, very, dare I say, early on linear type career, if you will, getting into a corporate executive role, and then suddenly you're in improv. How did that happen?
My kids were taking improv comedy classes as an after-school program, starting several years before I started. And I just watched my oldest kid overcome some social anxiety through that, among other things, and just how much fun they were having. And I was like, is there a version of this for grown-ups? Because I want to check this out. And I just fell in love. I took a workshop one day and it changed everything.
That is so cool. And for those who, have heard the word improv and sort of maybe have a bit of a sense about it, how might you define improv for folks out there who might not have such a good handle on it and haven't been through it?
The first thing I would say is it's not stand-up. People always are like, oh, so you do stand-up? I'm like, no. I don't stand up and tell jokes and make people laugh. I'm not good at that. It's a team activity. It's a team performance where we are creating lifelike scenes, but we're twisting them. We're making them fun. We're playing with things, and especially mistakes. Anytime a mistake happens, or a mistake, air quotes, that's when it starts to get fun, because we just get to play with that and see like, oh, what's the weird version of that we can play with, and see how people are when they interact.
So cool. And I mean, right. And so many times we sort of forget about what it's like to be a child and be curious and sort of try new things. And you, through this work and training, excuse me, give people permission, right? I think, to do that. And it oftentimes can open our minds and the way we think about things. That is what a creative way to get some of this work done and make it more accessible for people. I love that.
Yeah, we need permission to play as grown-ups. And that's a lot of the power of applied improv training, is we're playing while we're learning.
Right. The other night, a friend was having a little dinner party for some of the dads in my neighborhood. And my kids were like, where are you going? And my wife said, I was going to a daddy play date. It was pretty good.
Sounds like good times.
It was a pretty good night.
Yeah.
Last question before we dive into the fun questions, if you will, or the rapid fire questions, I should say. And if you do have questions for Jim, please do drop them in the comments. We're happy to grab those as we talk through it. But there's a famous children's song you like to use to help create burnout-proof organizations. What can you tell us a bit more about that?
I had this inspiration while I was out for a walk one day, and actually ran into a friend of mine who has helped me with some of the book launch strategy. And I said, hey, Sally, I had this realization. The work that I'm doing involves emotional intelligence, equity and inclusion, and expansive intimacy. They all start with EI. And I was like, it's EI, EI, EIO. Like Old McDonald, right? We all know that. So I just saw this thread start to run through some of the things I care most about. I've been doing emotional intelligence development work for years. In the last couple of years, I've gotten involved in DEI work. And I think the equity and inclusion part is the active part of that, because diversity is a fact, and belonging, the other part of that acronym, is the feeling we want. But like, how do those all connect? And I found that there was actually a thread that runs through it. So I've been writing a newsletter by that name. I just started it a couple months ago, and really exploring how to bring all of these concepts together to help organizations, help people navigate life in a much richer way, leave burnout behind, all that good stuff.
So powerful. And we got a great comment here from Katya Davidova. Katya, thank you for calling in here, listening in here today. Love that. We need permission to play as grown-ups, no doubt. Sadly, right? But that's where we are. Yeah, thank you, Katya. And Hannah Austin also jumping on here. Both Katya, a recently published author, and Hannah, soon to be. Thank you for joining us today in your notes.
And Hannah's another fabulous burnout coach. So for folks out there who haven't heard of her work, I'd encourage you to check her out as well.
And Katya wrote a book about finding joy in everyday life, which I love the book.
Also related to burnout. She got some amazing stories in her book. I've read that as well.
No doubt. Well, let's jump over to the rapid fire question, Jim, where everyone's going to learn everything there is valuable to know about you. And as I said, Jim's new book, Expansive Intimacy, is out, available wherever you buy books online today, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, wherever you might look. And also his podcast episode of the Creator Community is available right now. It came out just last week on the Creator Community, YouTube, Apple, Spotify, wherever you like to consume podcasts. So Jim, you ready for the rapid fire questions?
I'm ready. Let's go.
First and most important, favorite sandwich?
Ooh. Is avocado toast a sandwich? Open faith. I'm going with avocado toast.
I love it. Also a fan. Maybe some bacon crumbs on it once in a while. Love that. Favorite color?
I think I'm rocking this fuchsia, if that's what you want to call it. So I'm gonna go with that.
My prom date in sophomore year in high school wore a fuchsia dress, and she's like, "You need to get a fuchsia cummerbund and tie." And I remember thinking, "What is fuchsia? I don't know what that is." I had to go figure it out at the tuxedo rental store.
A little bit of pop on there. That's nice, John.
A little what?
A little pop. A little pop of color.
Just a touch.
Good. Yeah.
There's no hiding fuchsia. Favorite or most memorable vacation spot?
Ooh, I was gonna say Hawaii, but I'm gonna go with Ireland. I flew to Dublin to see U2 play at a medieval castle, and the opening acts were Coldplay and the Red Hot Chili Peppers. That's tough to beat.
Whoa. And for those of you
Yeah.
wondering what I meant when I said earlier, we're going to learn everything there is interesting and valuable to know about the author. That would be one of those stories, Jim. Thank you for sharing that. I love that. Scariest animal.
Snake, hands down, because they don't have hands and they're slithery and they're gross and they could be that big and I would go screaming and running like a yeah, just no snakes.
I'll tell you what, snakes get a really bad rap on this show. I'm just going to put it out there.
They
Better
just
fruit, apples or bananas?
hmm. I'm going with apples because you have way more varieties and you can put them in pie, which is the best food.
Best food group. Finally, someone got the answer right. This first one in a while. Thank you for that. Favorite or most memorable movie?
Wow. I'm gonna go with most memorable, and it's only because I watched it like 11 million times in college, and it's Monty Python's The Life of Brian.
Wow. Instant classic.
Mhm.
I love that. His series are a lot of fun. Favorite smell, Mr. Young?
Oh, wow, that's a great question. I love flowers of all variety, wildflowers. So I'm just gonna go with like I don't have a specific flower, but flowers to me, like I love that sweet scent.
Love it. I think for me, it's maybe coffee and bacon as you're sort of walking down the stairs in the morning to the kitchen. I think that might be it for me.
Not bad either.
Right. Last photo on your phone.
It's actually a stack of books that were part of my inspiration for how I father my kids, and it was based on a post by my friend Brian Anderson, who posted something similar. So the books that inspired me.
Nice. Nice. For I
It's an
think for
authory answer, right?
I mean that's a great answer. I think for me it's still the trick or treating with my youngest son the other night, which was a lot of fun.
That's
Uh,
solid.
Given this passion you have for music, Jim, favorite
Mm.
song to sing with or without an audience, and not today, but in
Aw,
general.
come on, John.
Hey, I'm happy to open the floor, but
All right,
we only
well,
got 7 minutes left.
I'm gonna cheat and I'm gonna give two answers. The favorite song for me to sing, like just kind of in my head, is a song by the Foo Fighters called Breakout because like Dave's primal scream in that song is un- unbelievable, unparred. Um, the other song, I actually sang a song live in front of an audience with a live band. I'd never sung before in front of a live audience. I did this about 4 years ago, and I sang "It's Good to Be King" by Tom Petty, and I kind of rocked it.
Nice. Is there video evidence of this recording of this song?
Yeah, there is somewhere. I know that it used to be on a Facebook stream for Megan Jo Wilson. She was a coach that I took a program through. She had it on a Facebook site. I know I have a copy somewhere on a hard drive. So there's definitely evidence. And I've watched it. It's, I know that I feel like I rocked it. You could be a judge.
Well, as you know, I'm taking the positive intelligence program right now. I'm learning how to be less judgy, but I'll consider it.
Yeah.
Uh, what is one thing that you should really throw out, Jim?
Oh, like several t-shirts. I can't. Like I was literally putting away my laundry this morning and I'm like stuffing I fold too, right? Like I'm stuffing them into my drawer. It's kind of ridiculous. Like I just need to get rid of some.
I think you and I have a similar problem there.
I think
What is
anything.
We talked a little bit about some of your broader goals for your book. What is your most audacious one you're thinking about for 2022 and beyond?
Ooh, my most audacious goal for 2022 and beyond. I'm going to go with beyond because my plate is already full for 2022. Um, I really want to scale up the work that I'm doing on burnout proofing organizations. I want to get into larger organizations. I want to figure out how to make that something that can can be like, I do a lot of the work myself right now. I want to figure out how to scale that so that I can be having a bigger impact.
Incredible. And you've already made so much progress on that, but looking to even go bigger yet with the book and beyond. You got to sign all these books with your pre-sale, right? For those who don't know, part of the author journey
Yeah.
is having a pre-sale and selling a bunch of books in advance. I think you sold well over 200, if I recall correctly, and then signing them, right?
Yeah.
What have you ever asked anyone for their autograph?
Yeah, one person ever. I'm not a fanboy, but when I was in Chicago doing this improv training with Mick Napier, who's trained like Tina Fey and Chris Farley and Stephen Colbert, like the absolute best of the best in comedy. I got to do a short class with him, and afterwards I asked him to sign my book. And now I get to use my sign that I had ready for this episode just in case it happened. 'Cause I remember the inscription he wrote on the book. He said, "Hi, Jim. Mick."
Well done.
He just told me to kind of forget about it. Don't worry about life. Just let it roll. It was great.
Well done. You had, I think that's such a great story. I love the prop there. You had so many amazing praise quotes for your book. And for those who don't know, these are the lovely quotes that people get on the back of their book. And those quotes do not appear there by accident, right? What is one of the praise quotes you'd like to share with our readers here today, our listeners?
Oh, geez. I don't. Well, I guess I'll go with one that I can mostly remember verbatim. It's actually a client I've been working with for a while, and he just said that. Now I'm not. You know what? I have it right here.
I thought you might.
Jim's insights have changed how I run my business and prioritize my own time for the better. And this is a CEO and founder of multiple tech startups that I've worked with for a few years. And like, that's it. Like helping a guy be able to have the business that he wants and the personal life that he wants, like be able to have both versions of success and not have to choose one or the other. That's where it's at for me. So I was really excited for that quote.
That is so cool. What a great quote. Thank you for sharing that.
Glad I keep that thing there.
I mean, seriously, it should be handy at all times, right? Most unique moment or most memorable from your writing journey. We've just a couple of questions left. And if you have yours, if you have some out in the audience, please feel free to drop them in the chat. We'll try to get to those here in a few minutes. But your most unique or memorable moment about the writing journey, Jim? You shared many on social media. I love that. I love you did that.
And that's exactly what I'm going to reference, because there was one, I was sitting in this chair. I'm standing today, but I was sitting in this chair, and my partner, who was writing a book at the same time, was sitting right over in the corner working on her laptop on her book. And I'm typing away, and I noticed that she's aiming her camera at me. And I realized she's trying to take a secretive photo of me while I'm writing my book. And I'm looking she's trying not to look at me, so she doesn't know I'm looking at the camera. And I just totally busted her on that. And I said, you got to give me that photo so I can post it. Cause it was just a really fun moment where we're both working hard and we both got to laugh about, just being silly about it.
That's hilarious. I saw an interview with John Hamm the other day, and the question to him was sort of similar to that. He said, he was saying, they're like, what's it like being you now that you're famous? And not that long ago, he wasn't, before sort of Mad Men, he wasn't that well known. And he said, seeing 50-year-old men hiding behind bushes to look at me as I walk down the street.
Oh man, that's something to aspire to, is to have a bunch of middle-aged guys hiding in bushes trying to get against me.
Right. I love that. Best part of being an author so far? I know it's early, but what's been your favorite part so far?
Yeah, I would say it's actually appreciating the authoring process. Like anybody who I see now who's written a book, I just have this other degree of reverence for what they've gone through. So I think it's just, a sense of connection to that experience.
Right. One of my favorite quotes is, nothing worth it is ever easy. I'm sort of paraphrasing Theodore Roosevelt. Many times people come through this program, and I've worked with dozens of authors throughout this thing over the last couple of years. It's, sometimes there's this frustration, like, this is hard. I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
it's a thing. Right. And putting a book together is, I know I certainly gained a great appreciation, not just for authors, multi-time authors, and really content creators in general. That it's a vulnerable thing to put yourself out there, because content creation is very permanent, and once it's out there, people can comment on it, right? And so it puts yourself in a pretty vulnerable position.
Yeah.
What would you say to those considering to write a book out there?
Take the idea that you have and then find the scary version of it, and then write a scarier version of that.
Wow. Did you scare yourself with your version of your book, your final version?
Oh yeah, I remember my developmental editor asked me a question about stigma, and that's what led me down the path of shame. I'm like, oh God, I don't want to do this. And I'm like, all right, I'll write a chapter on it. I'm like, oh, great. It's got to be a section of the book. And I was scared of like, what's the repercussions going to be of a guy who's talking about shame? And it was like, I had to get over that because we need more guys talking about shame because we all have it. And it's causing us a lot of challenges. It's keeping us in burnout. And it's keeping us away from intimacy.
Incredible work you're doing out there, Jim. And I love your book. I'm about halfway through it. I've really enjoyed the early pieces of it so far. It's been so fun to get to hear your story. Thank you for sharing it with the creator community. Last question for you, my friend. Doesn't have to be a sentence, but describe your writing journey in 5 words.
5 words. Opening myself up to new learning.
It's like 5.5, I think, but yeah, really well done. And right, learning journey for sure.
Yeah.
I love that. Thank you for that. Thank you for being on the show here today. As I said, season 5, the creator community is out now. You can go see Jim's full version of his episode, came out just last week. If you want to learn more about Jim Young and his new book, visit the Centered, or in his coaching services, visit thecenteredcoach.com or find him on LinkedIn at The Centered Coach. Jim, thank you so much for being on Meet the Author Live and sharing your story with the creators community. Great to see you today.
Yeah, thanks a lot, John. I appreciate you and for having me on.
Thanks to all our listeners out there for joining this episode of Meet the Author Live. Check out Jim's book, Expansive Intimacy, How Tough Guys Defeat Burnout, wherever you buy books online, and check out his full episode. As I said, I'm your host of the creator community, John Saunders. Keep creating and join us next week for our next episode. Thanks so much, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks, Jim.